Welcome, everybody, to episode 13. Now, we're at number 13 of the One State Solution podcast. My name is Alon,
I'm Elik.
and we are both anti-Zionists, even though it says Israel on our passport and Jewish on our Israeli identity cards. And today we have a topic in mind. So, Elik, you want to tell the audience what the topic of this episode is going to be?
Yeah, so me and Alon, we watched a YouTube video of some guy who is he's like Zionist who's doing a lot of videos of like to refute anti-Zionist I don't know. He is like part of the war, of the consciousness war, and he is on the Zionist side. And
Yes, he also has a passport that says Israel on it.
Yeah.
He also has an identity card, an Israeli identity card that says Jewish on it. Okay.
Yeah, and he's doing both in Hebrew and in English. And I don't know why I saw a video of him that says why Israel is not a colonial state.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to, and he refuted in this video the arguments that says that Israel is a colonial state. And I suggested to Alon that maybe we'll do some kind of debunking video
Yeah.
of him. And
Zionist destroys.
yeah, and
Like
then we understood we don't want to do it, but it's
Yes.
because it's just annoying, and I hate this kind of. I think like part of the reason we're not so successful is because we don't do this kind of shit, but
Yes.
we don't want to do this kind of stuff.
Yes. I will just tell the audience. We just watched this video in its entirety, like an hour ago to like prepare, and we had real intentions of actually debunking it, and then I personally got too upset because I was like, this guy is just full of shit. He's just lying. He's just saying all kinds of stuff that is irrelevant and wrong and without citations and so forth and so on, and illogical and beside the point and so forth and so on. And it just made me upset. So we decided that we're not going to do it this way. And the thing is that we really want to have an actual discussion. We really want to have a nuanced discussion, a deep discussion about what is colonialism, what is this Zionist project, why is this Zionist project, why should we think about it within the framework of colonialism, should we think about it in this framework, what works, what doesn't work, what is different, what is the same,
Yeah.
and how can we understand reality better.
Right.
And this is what we want to do. We don't want to do a debunking video. Okay.
Yeah. But it was good excuse to get into the discussion of what is colonialism, why we do think the Zionist project is a colonialist project, but also in what sense it's different for others,
Yes.
other colonial project. And I think like both of us are not historians. Like I read recently a book on like the Cy Engler book on settler colonialism, but I think like there's a deeper discussion to have that I want to reach on. What is this phenomena of colonialism? Is it connected to something deeper in human civilization that we want to touch on? How it's connected to power, to how societies have this tendency to take over other societies, and why this has happened, and how do we. And I think both of us are interested in decolonizing the planet.
Yes.
So we're thinking about it in wider terms, and for us, like Palestine, because it's a place we're intimately connected to, we want to start from here, but for us it's a part of a much bigger discussion.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that it's interesting, that I learned about colonialism as something of a phenomenon of the past. and many people, and now what happens in Palestine for many people around the world, like it brought colonialism back to the table.
Yes.
And the question of what is colonialism, how do we fight colonialism? Should we fight colonialism?
Yes. Is it even possible?
Is it even possible? Is
Yes.
it part of a natural part of human behavior since dawn of history?
Or even natural part of nature, you know?
Yeah.
Just, nature is colonialist, what can you do?
Yeah.
Like this kind of thinking.
I remember I saw on one of these nature series how a group of ants colonize other group of ants, and it was completely colonization, you know, like it was a genocide of ants, and you really saw how it happens. And yeah, so it does happen in nature, this phenomena. But
I would say it happens in nature because humans are part of nature, and all of human society is, just by definition, part of nature. There is no distinction between nature and human society, and this distinction is fake and supremacist.
I agree with you.
And colonialist, and we will get to that.
Yeah, but it happens among other species as well.
Yes.
And so what is our starting point? Because I think we do want to define colonialism and do start from thinking about the Zionist project.
Yes, but I do want to emphasize this. I think it bears emphasizing. We are not historians.
Yeah.
We are not experts. The guy that triggered this episode, he is definitely not a historian and definitely not an expert.
I don't know what his expertise are. I think he is a master's in philosophy or something.
I think he has a master's in bullshitting. But the point is, we're not even going to name names because it doesn't matter. We will say what the kind of arguments that he presents are, and they're not new and they're not different.
Yeah.
But so, no, we don't have any official expertise. The only reason that I learned about colonialism and that I care about colonialism is because I feel that it is highly relevant to my life, to my position in the world, to understanding reality, to understanding politics, to understanding why things are the way they are, why I see all this violence and inequality and injustice and oppression around me. I think without this concept of colonialism, I cannot understand it. That's why I started learning about colonialism, and this is the way that we want to approach this discussion. The theory of colonialism, the field of research, which is centered around this concept of colonialism, is something that should help us understand reality better. And it should help us understand the reality of our immediate surroundings better. Why? Because we are living inside a colonialist project. When you live inside a colonialist project, which we will explain why we think that very soon, it is unavoidable that you understand what colonialism is and what the characteristics of colonialism are and how colonialism operates in order to understand what is going on around you. If you do not, you will not understand what is going on around you. And I think that this is something that is, it's reality, that people around us do not understand what is going on. Most people around us do not understand what they are part of. They do not understand what they are doing. They do not understand why they are doing it. They do not understand why they are suffering. They do not understand why they are unhappy, why they are lonely, why they are depressed, why they are violent, why they are aggressive, why they are racist. They don't understand that all these things are true. And I think that it has to do with a lot of ignorance, historical, political, philosophical ignorance, and specifically ignorance about this highly relevant subject of colonialism.
Right.
So we are not experts on the academic level. Elik read more than I read, like official academic texts, but I think we are experts in the sense that we thought about this a lot and deeply, and that we experience this firsthand. So this is the kind of thing that we can suggest in this discussion, like many other discussions.
Yeah. And I think I would argue that it's even better for the Zionists to understand that they are colonialists. Zionists used to, when you tell them there's nothing, like there's many things Zionists hate to hear, but one of the things they hate the most is to hear that they are colonialist, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
they will push you away. And I'm saying that it's a bit like someone who goes to a doctor and the doctor gives a diagnosis and the patient is like, how dare you tell me that I have cancer?
Yes.
It's like, guys, you need to understand what's happening, because if you don't, you risk yourself. Because I think not just that Zionist is a colonialist project, it's also probably one that is going to fail, and the consequences are going to be already very bad to the Zionists themselves, but I think it's going to get worse and worse. And they don't, because they're in amnesia about their history, in denials, so they don't understand what's happening, and they will not be ready for the day when this thing is going to collapse on their
Yes.
head.
Yes.
So this is part of what motivates me as well when I speak about this.
And I think that this leads to another point, which is, I think the reason why Zionists don't like to hear that Israel is a colonialist project is because there's like more things that they add on it. Okay, so when we say Israel is a colonialist project, what we mean basically is just a diagnosis of reality, without anything else.
Without just moral judgment.
Yes, without just an objective, statement about reality, which could be true or false, but it is first of all that. Okay. Mm-hmm. But Zionists think that when you say that Israel is a colonialist project, you say Israel is a colonialist project, therefore you are all colonialists, and colonialists are evil, so you are evil, and also colonialists should be handled, in a certain way, should be punished, should be, banished from the place that they are, and so forth and so on. This is not what we are saying. We might be saying a few things that are tangentially related to the kind of thing, things that I was saying now, but we're not saying that. In fact, what we want to say, and we will elaborate on this later, is that Zionists and maybe settlers in colonialist projects in general are also victims of the situation. And this is something that we go back to a lot in this podcast, that it's not true that Zionists are evil. We don't think also that most Nazis were evil, or any of them. We don't know, okay? But I don't think that Nazis are evil. And I think it's just a historical process that happens, and I think that most human beings, in most situations, are in fact victims of the situation to a high extent, okay? And one of the ways that you are victims of the situation is that you have been convinced that this is not the situation that you are in. And if you understand that this is the situation that you are in, you can understand also how you are being taken advantage of. I'm speaking to Zionists directly now, okay? You are being taken advantage of for the interests of other people who have power and who want more power, okay? And so this is the thing. We're not saying Zionists are evil. That's not the point. And I want to say this to some of our pro-Palestine audience, that some of you do behave like Zionists are evil and should be handled in a certain way, and you do use this framework or a bastardization of this framework of academic research of colonialism and of discussion about colonialism to kind of support this claim. And then when Zionists react to this attempt to frame them as evil and as worthy of I don't know what exactly, then it's hard to blame them, okay? So we want to have a discussion that is about what is going on and what we need to do to improve the situation. This is the kind of discussion that we want to have. We don't want to say these are bad people, these are good people. It's not. That's not the point. Okay.
I think also, like what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's reminded me a quote of Edward Said when he said, "We are victims of victims." Do you know this one? Here?
I don't know the quote, but I know Edward Said, and I'm not surprised that this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that he said.
Yeah.
I remember I watched a documentary about Edward Said. It was shortly after October 7th when I was working overtime on de-Zionizing my girlfriend. We watched it together, and it really
It worked.
Yes, it worked. It was a major part of the process where
Wow.
when she listened to Edward Said, it was like she was like, oh wow, this guy is making a lot of sense, and I really respect the way that he's speaking, and truly it did the work. But in any case, I remember him talking about how he went to see the movie Shoah. Okay, I think it's like a really long movie, like 10 hours. I don't know.
Claude Lanzmann.
Yes, about the Holocaust, and he
My
was like,
father keeps saying one day we will have to sit and to watch all of it, and he says that it's one of the most powerful movies that was ever done about the Holocaust.
So I'm sure that it is a powerful movie, and Edward Said agrees that it is a powerful movie, and he says, yes, I understand why, I understand what happened to the Jews in Europe. I understand the horrible implications of the Holocaust, and I can sympathize completely, and I do sympathize completely. I'm paraphrasing, okay, but this is the vibe of what he said. But it doesn't justify in the least what you did to us. Okay, it's just like there's no connection between the two.
Yeah, it's not. There is not. It's not written in any like book of laws that a victim have a right to victimize somebody else who didn't have anything to do.
If anything, then the opposite. Because you are victims of oppression, you should be the ones who understand oppression the best, and who oppose oppression the most. This is where you should take it. When you say never again, you should mean never again. You shouldn't mean never again to us, and so that it will never happen again to us, we need to do it to others. This is ridiculous. This is the opposite of what of the moral of the story. Okay.
Yeah, and I think let's take it back now to colonialism and try.
Yes,
to
I think
it's
a very smooth segue, because one of the arguments that this guy raised, we don't even want to give him traffic. I don't think that his videos are good enough and that his channel is good enough. I don't want him to get traffic because of us, and I don't want to get his traffic. I don't want either side of this equation. But the point is that one of the main arguments that he made was this is not a settler colonialist project because they are not settlers, because they are refugees. So look at already we suffered the Holocaust. The Jews suffered the Holocaust, and therefore it's okay to go to Palestine and do whatever we did. This is the same kind of argument, only in the context of the supposed academic discussion about whether this is settler colonialism or not. So maybe we should use this opportunity to sum up his arguments. You want to say what you remember from his arguments, just because they are very representative of the kind of arguments that Zionists give when they try to refute the claim that the Zionist project, the State of Israel, is a settler colonialist project.
Okay, but do you think we need to give a definition of what colonialism is first?
Yes.
Maybe it will be a good starting point. It doesn't have to be like, I think there's many, I don't think concepts like colonialism have one definition.
Yes.
And I prefer to talk how I understand what it is, but there is a common understanding.
Yes, and we must say that this guy did not give a definition of
Right.
colonialism in his video refuting the claim that Zionism, that the State of Israel is a colonialist state. So, like, this shows you the level of seriousness. So we do want to give a definition, but the point is that the definition is also a discussion, but it's
Yeah.
a discussion that we need to have. So maybe we can give some definitions, some of the ways that we want to define it, and maybe afterwards actually read what is written in Wikipedia, for example, just as one source of information. Okay, so let's try to define what colonialism is.
Okay, so I think the way I understand it is when there's like it depends if we define, like there's distinction between like colonialism that is like settler colonialism, which this is what we're talking in the case of Palestine, and colonialism in sense of like imperial and you know, when there's some country that just want to exploit the resources of other country.
Yes.
And so when we think about colonialism, we think about the situation where a country, a state, expands its area of like of rule of where it rules.
Yes.
To areas where other countries exist or land, and it takes over the resources of that country. It's usually and it behaves in a very undemocratic way toward the inhabitants of this land. It's never asked their permission. It's not a voluntary interaction between the country that goes and does it and the inhabitants of that country. It's always a relationship of power. And for many years I thought like, and that's how I've been taught about it in school, like Zionism is not a colonialist state because there is no metropole. Like
in school, you actually heard a discussion about this question of whether Israel is a colonialist state or not?
I remember we learned some stuff about colonialism, and we knew that the British were colonialists in Palestine, and they were colonialists in India, and that it was something that empires do, and that there was a process of decolonization in the beginning. I don't remember like that.
So this is more evidence that your school was not as bad as mine. I don't even remember any form of discussion in any of these questions ever in history class. Maybe I didn't listen in history class. I don't know. But I don't remember any of it.
I don't know. I remember that I was always knew that some people say when I was still in Zion that Israel is a colonialist state, and I didn't understand it because I thought, okay, but there is no mother state, there is no metropole, it was just people who came here, refugees or whatever.
Which is the kind of argument that this guy raised.
Yeah, but I never, because I wasn't aware, because to me colonialism was this process when empires take one state become very powerful and take over other countries. That's what I know about the Roman Empire, you know, back then, and then the British Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they all had colonies.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes also empires also moves people to other places, and this is where we have settler colonialism, but I didn't think about the Zionist case as that, and I think this guy also says like there is no metropole, and you will hear often Zionists say, we don't have anywhere else to go. We just.
But now we're kind of answering arguments.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell me if I understand this correctly. You're saying that the definition you gave to begin with is not the actual definition that you want to give to colonialism. Because I wasn't comfortable with the definition that you gave.
I think what I said is how I used to think about what colonialism.
So maybe let's not confuse this argument too much or this discussion too much, and you say what you actually think now is the definition of colonialism.
You see, it's not that easy because I'm thinking about what will be the just one definition that will capture all the kinds of colonialism, because I think I wanted to say, okay, there's the other kind of colonialism, which is what we call settler colonialism, when society who came from, or a group of people who come from different continents, and they take over land and resources of other society who exist in this land, and sometimes they subjugate the local population.
Yeah, and sometimes they try to destroy it.
Sometimes they try to destroy it, and often they try to destroy it. It's very common,
Yes.
and it happens, and usually it has to happen with the help of some empire, but it doesn't have necessarily to include imperialism.
So I want to say something like methodological about this thing that is happening right now.
Okay.
This is why I say that I hate debates. Okay, because I think that when you want to seriously discuss some phenomenon, if it's a phenomenon in actual reality and not some abstract philosophical discussion, then there's always nuances and complications, and it's really hard to pin down a definition of something. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to להיתלות באילנות גבוהים, which is an expression in Hebrew to hang on high trees, which means that you want to refer to reputable sources. Let's go to Wittgenstein, okay? And Wittgenstein, he was like, look, all this definition thing, you're trying to do something that is basically impossible, okay? When you're speaking about a concept, a certain concept, usually there's no definition of the concept.
Yeah.
There's a family of things, and there's family resemblance between the different parts of this family of things, okay?
Yeah.
There's certain resemblance between this and this, and certain resemblance between this and this, and then you get a family of things, and there's not necessarily a definition, okay?
Yeah, I don't think there is one definition of what colonialism is.
But my point is that when you do a debate and you try to debunk arguments and dunk on other people, it does not allow a discussion that really considers these kinds of complexities. And this is why I don't want to do debates and I don't want to do debunking, because I want to have the actual discussion. And the actual discussion is not as sharp and not as clear cut. Okay? So there are the point is to understand reality, to understand processes. Okay? And the thing is that there is a family of cases in history, okay, where some kind of processes happened that share something in common. Is it easy to pin down what exactly is in common with all these processes? I don't know. But the point is that when we see these processes as part of a bigger phenomenon, we can understand what is going on. We can compare and contrast, okay? And we can say, in this case, what happened was this and this and this. So we can predict or assume or, extrapolate that in this case, similar things are going to happen. Or different things because the circumstances are different, okay? So we want to have this discussion. But after this caveat, maybe I think that the heart of it, what I see as the heart of it, is that there is some population that is in some sense foreign to a certain area that comes to this area and takes over at the expense of the population that is living in this area currently.
Yeah.
And then a certain dynamic is created, and this dynamic is a dynamic of power. Okay, it's an imbalance of power, and inside this dynamic, all kinds of things happen. Okay, so exploitation happens, and the population. So again, when a population comes to a place, sometimes. So it can be for many different reasons, okay? And it can be with different goals, and the processes that happen can be different in many situations. But there's like a branching, okay? And one case is where the population that is coming wants to integrate into this place, wants to integrate with what already exists in this place.
And this we wouldn't call colonialism. We
Yes.
call immigration or refugee or
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I think in this case the process that happens is not a process of colonization, but the other case, and of course there is a spectrum and so forth and so on, but there's like two categorically different paths. And the other path is when the population that comes to the place feels like it's a good idea and wants to take over this place and to be, you know, the landlords of the place. Landlords, just very, you know, literally.
And there's this process that the people who are already there becomes like strangers in their own home.
Yes.
And this happens, I think, every time when there's colonizations in different forms. Suddenly someone who's from different culture, from different, who have different norms of behavior, tells them where they can go and where they cannot. Or could be their boss where they work.
Yes, and we will elaborate on this in the case of Zionism.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really people who come and, you know, kick you out of the land, kill you, you know, it can get, and there's always a conflict, because I don't think there was a process in colonization in history where there was no resistance to
Of
this.
course,
Yeah.
of course, because if someone comes to the place that you live in, and it doesn't matter if there's your name is written on some official document, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of arguments that Zionists use to refute the claim that it was they didn't have their names written anywhere.
Yeah.
So we came to a land without a people, right?
Yeah.
Palestine was not a state.
Yeah.
The state of Palestine never existed, so we didn't take over. So there's no occupation because we didn't. There's in Hebrew, the word for occupation is kibush, and this is also the word for conquest, and the word for conquering another country. So Zionists, they like to play with words because they don't like to actually deal with reality.
But you know, there's always this gaslighting. Like yesterday, I was like walking in Tel Aviv, and there was like street that calls Hakovshim, you know, and
the conquerors,
or
the occupiers,
and there was a coffee place that called Hakovshim in that street, and you know, people go here and because there's always this. They get insulted when you tell them you're they're colonizers, and then they say themselves, look, we have and they take pride in it. It's this weird psychology.
Yes.
And I think you would find it anywhere. It's also something typical to colonialists because they also take pride in their power and their superiority of power.
Yes, but then they present themselves as victims and as powerless and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay, but so the point is that they like to play with these words, and they say, we never conquered this place because it was never there was never a state called Palestine anyway.
Yeah, and also I know that let's say in America they said that the indigenous population there, they didn't own the place because they didn't have property rights like we have, you know, because the American had the colonists, the British colonists has their way of like dealing with property, which was private property. So they say they had no claim to the land because they didn't have our rules, which, you know.
But this is exactly the kind of thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Where the foreign population comes to the place, comes to the indigenous population. We're going to talk about this word indigenous because it is highly related to the discussion that we want to make, and this is also a nuanced discussion that we want to make. So they come to the indigenous population and they enforce their own norms on this population. They say, private property, this is just the way things are, right? So to them, this is just the way things are, because when you are living in a culture, the norms of this culture seem to you like the only thing possible, right? But so they use the fact that they have these kinds of norms to enforce their own power on this on the population that was living there. Okay, and what I wanted to say about Zionism as a I had a point with so my point is that it doesn't matter if your name is written in some official document. Okay, it doesn't matter. If you are living somewhere, you feel as if this place is yours in some sense. In what sense it is yours? In the sense that you are living there. Okay? And the people who were living there weren't living there at the expense of other people. Maybe they were living there at the expense of other living beings, which we will talk about more later. But they weren't living there at the expense of other people. Then other people came and they took this place, they expelled them. They said, this is ours, not yours. And this, if this happened to you, of course you would resist. Of course, because this is something that needs to be in the very, very front and center in this discussion. Land is life. Land is life. I think that when people like Yuval Noah Harari talk about, land, there's no shortage of land. Maybe there isn't shortage of land, but if you take a population that's living somewhere and expel it from that place, their capacity for life is diminished and destroyed. You are connected to a land because the land gives you life. The land gives you water. The land gives you food. The land gives you space. If you don't have land, you don't have life. And we must understand this, that if you take the land from someone, you take the life from them as well.
And it explains you all what happens now, right? That because both the colonizer and the colonized know that land is life, right? That's why the Palestinians return to their rubble in northern Gaza. Like they say,
because they have nowhere else to go.
But they know that they know two things. First, they have no else to go, but they know they're up against enemy who wants to take everything from them. And this is what they know. And it's a form, sticking to the land is a form of resistance.
Yes, the summum.
And I think that's why it's important to talk about colonialism now, because everything that happens now is around that. It's around, the Palestinians in Gaza. It's people who've been expelled from their land, and now the people want to take what's left from this land. This thing is still going on, and there's people like this guy who want to say, no, it's not about colonialism. It's just a conflict that somehow, by some reason, it ends up that one side keeps having more and more and more and more. And some side keeps having less and less and less and less. And the reason that they are, and what the Zionists will say, it's because that they insist on the illegitimacy of us, we keep taking more and more from them. Because what do Zionists say when they reject the notion that we're talking about colonialism? They say it's a struggle between two national movements. But one, for some reason, is don't want to acknowledge the other. So the other have no choice by taking more and more and more and more. That's how...
That's the narrative that they like to tell.
That's the Zionist narrative on a nutshell, There are also like the, religious Zionists, that says it's all ours because of,
because it's written in some book.
Because it's written. But let's say if I would take
they really like it when things are written in some book. In the book of the taboo, right? There's the taboo that where it is written whose land is what land is whose property. And also the Bible, it's written that this land is our property. They really like to write it in book, and then the book is sacred, and then it's ours.
But now I had some thought that I thought is important in relation to it. Because you have the liberal Zionists who say all of Zionists reject the fact that it's colonialism. Let's start from that, okay? But and you have the liberal Zionists that would say we have two national movements, and we are willing to share. Let's have two states, right? One for them and one for us. And they're refuting it, so we keep taking more and more. But at one day when they will be ready, you know, like a Nat Wilf kind of style that says when they will give up the right of return.
Yes, their Palestinianism.
Their Palestinianism, and they will become like a normal national movement.
Yes.
That understand that what's important is the fact that you have some sovereignty, even if it's a small, like we always understood, you know. There's a lie here that goes both ways. Also that we are not expansionist, and that Zionism can agree to only part of the land, which never happened, and they cannot because I think they're colonialists. But she will say when the Palestinians will agree to be a normal national movement who agree to sovereignty in some part of the land, we can have a partition.
Yes.
And the Palestinians keep losing more and more because their original sin is by rejecting partition. So this is one sort of Zionist claim and then you have the more right wing that says no, it's ours, it's just ours. But I say both of them serving each other because both are not admitting that it's a conquest of power that will always be against the Palestinians, that will always look to exploit them, to take over their land, and ultimately to genocide them. And then the what they call the Palestinian rejectionism is a reaction to that. That's why Palestinians have to say, the Palestinians cannot grant any legitimacy to this project. And then the Zionists point to this, that the Palestinians say no, like we don't want two states, that they're not from here, they just took our land, because the Palestinians see that project for what it is.
So this brings me back to the definition of colonialism. We were talking about two different populations, one that comes from another place and that wants to take over the land and become the landlords. Okay.
Yeah.
And we talked about this fork of whether the population that's coming to the place wants to integrate into the place or wants to take over the place. And I think that, so you might wonder, what creates this difference? Okay, and I think that this relates to another part of this this concept of colonialism. Okay, so let's look at what happened in Palestine. Why did the Jews who come to Palestine feel like they wanted to become the landlords? I think this again goes back to power. Okay, so maybe there are different reasons, but I think one main reason is power. And you can ask, how did the Zionists reach a situation where they could take all the land? And why did they want to take all the land? And I think that the answer to both questions is the same, that they could. Okay? So why, and the reason that they could is because they were supported by very powerful forces. Okay? And this is, so when this guy wants to refute the claim that Israel is a colonial state, he says there's no metropole, there's no mother state.
Yeah.
But things can be more complex than this.
Yeah.
The support that this project got is not exactly of the form that there is a state and the state initiates this project directly and manages this project directly. No, this is not the kind of thing that happened. Something a little bit more complex happened, and I think that one of the reasons that it worked is because it's more like, okay, so classical colonialism can't work anymore in the 21st century. And it barely could work in the latter half of the 20th century.
Right.
Because this thing became so tainted. Okay? Everybody knew that this sucked ass. Okay? And nobody wanted to participate in it. But this kind of indirect colonialism, it could work. It wasn't tainted. Okay? So what happened here? Maybe I will say something a little bit simplified, but I think it's in the right direction of what happened. So there was the Western Empire, whatever that is, a conglomerate of forces, mainly concentrated in Europe and the US, that had a vested interest in creating a colony in the Middle East. Okay? Because the Middle East did not have enough influence there. Okay? They tried to get a lot of influence there by, Britain and France taking over the area and trying to divide the area between themselves in the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the famous Sykes-Picot Agreement at the end of the First World War, which is why the borders in the Middle East are so strict, because they were literally drawn with, rulers on a map between these guys, Sykes and Picot. And so they tried to divide it. It didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. So what was Plan B? Plan B was to create this colony. And they were like, okay. I'm not saying that any of this was like consciously, a conscious discussion between the leaders, but maybe it was. Maybe some of it was. Maybe some of it wasn't. It doesn't matter, because this is the kind of thing that happened, consciously or unconsciously. So what happened was, here are these Jews. These Jews are, population that is surplus population in Europe. So they are a population who are of an inferior status in our hierarchical system of colonialism, patriarchy, racial supremacy, white supremacy, and so forth and so on. We can take advantage of them. We can exploit them to create this colony in the Middle East. And then the Holocaust happened. And I think that this is also something that we should elaborate on. How the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, was part of this process. It's kind of...
It's interesting. It's a new way of thinking, and I feel I'm not informed enough to... it's kind of speculations about history, but it makes...
To me, it's the only story of this aspect of history that makes sense to me. I don't know how much it's corroborated by actual historical research, but it makes sense to me. So we were talking about how it's similar to the way that Trump is talking about Gaza now, right? Trump is saying Gaza is destroyed.
Yeah.
The population there is suffering. We must do something with them, and he's conveniently forgetting or ignoring the fact that why is Gaza destroyed? Because of the guy sitting right next to you, Mr. Trump, whose name is Benjamin Netanyahu, who this guy and what he represents, that destroyed Gaza. So you destroyed it, and then you go, now something must be done about the people living there.
Your weapons, yeah?
Yes.
You both destroyed it together.
Yes, you collaborated in destroying it, and now you're talking about how to solve the problem that you created, as if it's some kind of natural disaster. Okay?
Yeah, and why not to repair it and then bring the people back, if you care about the people so much, but...
Yes, and look how it is so analogous to what happened to the Jewish people in Europe. Oh, they had the Holocaust, oh no, what a shame. Now they need a safe haven. And let's find them a safe haven.
Think about it from the eyes of the colonists, of the imperialists, for sure, it's not going to be a safe haven.
Yes.
If you think about it a bit from the outside, you put these people here to your imperialist goals, and of course all the area is going to be hostile. Of course there's going to be resistance from the indigenous population. And of course the people who are there are going to pay the price, because at some point it's going to fail. I think the people...
It will always fail.
Always fail. People here have to... It always demanded a huge cost. you know, from people who have to, so many people had to, you know, so of course, like, you know, the Jewish population here is privileged in some sense, but they have to go to a military conscription that is like the worst kind of slavery that exists on the planet. That the only reason that they are okay with it is because they're super brainwashed.
Mhm.
And
I disagree that it's the worst kind of slavery that exists on this planet, but I think it's bad.
it's very bad.
Okay.
Like, it's not just, you don't have just to do work. You, part of the work you do is to kill and risk and take the risk of being killed
Yes.
in this. And you know, Israeli society is destroyed now, you know, like I heard about so many cases of like a woman describing that their husband came back from war and
Yes, domestic abuse.
domestic abuse. But like, Israel, as because the mechanism of denial is so, like, you know, advanced, so people, the society learned to absorb all these traumatized men and kind of ignore that it's happening. And because it's like, yeah, it's like this, I feel like it works on this power of this cartoon who run and they continue to run and they don't look down.
Only when they look down
And
do they fall.
yeah, like, they don't recognize, but at some point they will understand it and they fall. And at some point this colony is going to collapse, but from the imperialist point of view, okay, so at some point it will, yeah.
We'll find another
We will
another
find-
group to advance our interests.
So, yeah, and so the fact, and every time when you talk with Zionists about these projects, they say, no, we're not colonists because we suffered the Holocaust, we're refugees. So, and they're ignoring the fact, that it's like all the, like, you know, the many of the American colonists were like minorities who were oppressed. It's something like Cy Engler talking about in his book. He said how capitalism.
Can you just tell what book it is?
It's called Settler Colonialism. I read it once and I want to. It just, I lost my Kindle before we did this episode because he has so many good quotes. But he explained how capitalism always created a population that actually Europe didn't know what to do with, and also
The
capitalism,
surplus population.
surplus population, but there was also this need to accumulate more resources. So you send this surplus population overseas, and you know, maybe it's this cycle of exploitation, you know, that so the fact that many of the settlers are also oppressed people, exploited people who suffered from you know, persecution from different sorts. It's not new. I think what Zionists don't understand, that all the arguments that they have, that they think is so original, that other colonists never claimed that they were indigenous to the land, that other colonists were not persecuted, that they think that everything that happens here, and of course it has some uniqueness, and we also wanted to discuss the uniqueness, but
Yes.
I think what people don't get, that the uniqueness that they feel is because it's happening now.
Yes, and to them.
And to them.
Yes.
It's not because it's like every time the oppressor in history feel like he's some kind of special, that he has special excuse, that he's facing some kind of evil.
Do you think the Nazis did not think that the Jews were some kind of existential threat to Aryanism and European culture?
No people are like perfect victims. Also, the Native Americans were did massacres to white settlers at some situation. It was, and they could be very cruel to each other. They were not like this romantic, perfect civilization. Never
peaceful,
did wrong. And you know, even so, the fact that the Palestinians resisted and that they're doing cruel stuff when they resist, it doesn't change the overall picture. It doesn't change the story. It doesn't change the situation. That it's group of people that backed by you know, power of empire, of money, took over other society, and it's an ongoing process that leading to the erasure of the indigenous society, and we're in the depth of this process right now. And I think if Zionists are not gonna understand that this is what they're doing and this is what they're part of, the backlash it could be reversed. It could be that, they're gonna be eliminated because they're doing it in time where you cannot do this anymore like it could have been done in the past. And they're doing in the heart of a continent that they are not the true majority. Like there's many things that going against them, and they feel it in their subconscious, and that's why. But because it's in the subconscious and it's connected to this Jewish trauma of persecution, they don't face it as it is and say like, if we don't learn to live with the people who live here as one group among many and just as equals and integrate, the result's gonna be very bad.
Yes.
And I'm honestly I'm terrified.
So I think you said many things, and it really cuts to the heart of the matter. There is this process here, okay?
Yeah.
And this thing called colonialism happened in many cases in history, and we want to learn from it.
Yeah.
And I think if you think about other cases where it happened, and you think about what is happening here as another example of this, with its own idiosyncrasies, but with points of similarity, then you can compare and contrast. So let's do this in practice, okay? So one of the arguments of Zionists, like we said, is that we are actually refugees. We're not settlers, we're refugees.
Yeah, and we're refugees of one of the most horrible genocides that ever happened in history. And
yes. But let's compare and contrast. Let's say that we compare this to what happened in Australia, okay?
Yeah.
So it is common knowledge. I'm not a historian, but if someone knows differently, please correct me if I'm wrong. But it is quite common knowledge that much of the population that came to Australia from the UK was a population of prisoners, of people who were imprisoned for crimes. And as far as I know, many of these crimes were things like stealing a loaf of bread because they were hungry. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay? So these people were imprisoned. They were rejected from society because they were also surplus population in some sense. And then they sent this surplus population to Australia to do whatever, okay? And this became a colonialist project, okay? But the population there was also made up of refugees, of people who were rejected from society. It was also true in the US, okay? The original settlers in, in the east of the American continent were rejects of British society. And they wanted to, at some point, they wanted to disconnect from British society, right? This is the War of Independence, which was about taxes, basically.
Yeah.
They felt as if they were being exploited by the motherland in the UK, and they were like, no, we don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not super unique that the population of settlers is a population of rejects. And I think this bears to reason, okay? Because no one really wants to go to
right. It's
a
not
foreign...
a natural thing for you to want to
yeah,
do.
well, like think about it. Let's say you live in your in the land that you were born in, okay? You live there, and everything is fine and dandy, okay? Why would you want to go to a completely foreign place, completely hostile place, to be far away from home, to be far away from your family, to be far away from everyone that you know and love, from your own culture, from your own, way of living? Go there, try to negotiate and fight with a foreign, with a population that is foreign to you, that is indigenous to that place, but foreign to you, to kill and to die and to do atrocities. Why would you want to do that? The only reason that someone would want to do that is if A, they are psychopaths, which most people are not, or B, they were rejected from their own society. So in this sense, I think that the case of the Jewish population that came to Palestine is not very unique.
It's not very unique, and I also think there's no way that these people also, like, Zionists want to say there is no metropole, there is no country who took, says like these are people and we're sending them there, right? There was no country who did this officially. But how can a group of refugees who have nothing can take over a country and make it their own without an imperial support? Like this kind of things. Think about like group of refugees from Syria now taking over France or something. It's not something that even possible to imagine.
Oh, it's very possible to imagine. It's something called the Great Replacement Theory, which is something that racists and fascists all over Europe and the US are saying is going to happen or even happened. Yeah. Okay, it's not. It's easy for them to imagine, but it's easy to imagine only if you disregard completely the power imbalance and the actual power structure.
If you did it, and this is something very similar to Zionism. Zionists keep saying they want to throw us to the sea because they actually threw people to the sea.
Yes.
Actually, people were thrown to.
It's all projection.
And it's funny that this says everything they project, they actually did it physically, They threw people to boats and kicked them away and people drowned. It happened in Jaffa and it happened in Akka, So I think like the story of colonialism, it shows us that it's not over also in Europe.
Yes.
Like when they're afraid of these people that they once colonized, now they coming back as refugees, and in the colonist mind, there's always this fear, and it's the fear of the slave owner also, that one day they will take over.
Yeah, and the tables will be flipped.
Which you can always say it's not completely irrational fear, because when you do this to people for so long, they start to envy you. They also see your position and they want to take your place. It's not disconnected from reality to be afraid of it, but the conclusion the colonist always draws like more power. He doesn't know anything else than power.
So this connects to another point that I want to raise. I don't know if we want to go deeply into that, but we need to mention the connection between imperialism and colonialism.
Yeah.
Colonialism is also a tool of imperialism.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think I mentioned before that nowadays classical colonialism will not pass. It's just like, it's taboo. Okay? No one thinks that it's a good idea anymore.
Even though when Trump said we're gonna own Gaza, he brought back to the table a classical colonialism that people thought is. Now, I don't think he can do it because of what you say. Like, I don't think it will pass. But it's interesting that suddenly Trump brought to the table and classical old school colonialism.
So this is another.
We will own Gaza.
So this is another aspect of this discussion, that when an idea remains in a more subtle form, then there's always the risk of it coming back in the more direct form. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I want to continue this. Let's say that it is now a no to do colonialism. So we need to do it in indirect ways. Okay. Yeah. So for example, we need to find this population of Jews who suffered the Holocaust, just a weird thing that happened. We don't know how it happened. They suffered the Holocaust, and the problem of the Jews need to be solved. And how do we solve the problem of the Jews? Oh, there is a very convenient way that we can solve this problem. We can send them all to Palestine to have their own national home in Palestine. Okay, so this is an indirect way. But there are other indirect ways that, not exactly colonialism, but it's an adjacent phenomenon to colonialism. It's another part of imperialism, continues to happen to this day. And this is something that I found out, I think 3 or 4 years ago. I knew that the global north, so to speak, or the Western world, or the developed countries are taking advantage of underdeveloped countries or developing countries or the global south or whatever you want to call it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't know was that this was very, very blunt in the sense that, so okay, so there was classical colonialism that Europe did in Africa, for example. Okay, so and now, after the process of decolonization, the classical colonialism stopped, but still there are remnants of this, and the remnants are that in the system of the global north, in the system of norms of the global north, there is this concept of money and debt. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and in their minds, African countries owe them money for what happened with colonialism. I don't know the exact. So why do they owe money? I think it's the excuse is that they gave them money to like recover from the damage that happened. No one knows why. Okay, so and now African countries are repaying a debt that they owe to European countries, and this debt is so large, and the ability of African countries to repay this debt is so low that it keeps acquiring more and more interest, and it will never be repaid. It will only grow. It only grows and grows and grows, and it will only grow and grow and grow. And if you just divide the world into the thing called the global north and the thing called the global south, and you see how much resources are flowing,
Mm-hmm.
you see that a lot of resources are flowing from the global south to the global north, from poor countries to rich countries, and that the debt that these poor countries are paying is only growing because of the concept of interest and compound interest.
Wow.
So this is what you don't even need colonialism in this situation. Why would we send people, right? Why would we send people to actually control the local population using force, using physical force? We don't need to do it anymore. The resources are flowing anyway. We set up the system. It's like a casino, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We set up the system so that the house always wins, and the house is the rich nations in this case. And that's it. The system is set up, and if there is no revolution, then the system will continue as normal. And the normal is that resources are flowing from poor countries to rich countries, and that's it. We won. The Europe won, and that's it.
But then it raises to me the question: why do they still need the Zionist project, which is something I don't completely understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have
why
like thoughts.
Why it exists nowadays.
Because I think you need to maintain the system in many different ways. So some of it works without direct use of force, but you also need direct use of force sometimes.
And it needs to, I feel like it needs, like, I don't know, because I have many thoughts. Why is it important? Why do the Palestinians have to pay this price in the 21st century? Why? Why? In what interest is to of the US is to genocide the Gazans like this? One of the poorest and the people who have nothing in this world. They have no army to really defend themselves. The only thing they have is is this guerrilla fighters who can. What they can do is survive in their own territory, and in a way they won because in this imbalance of power, when you succeed to survive and not be completely crushed, you're the winner, this kind of, and it's also something to talk about colonialism and what kind of warfare exists, in
Yes.
colonialism.
Yes, always the people who are occupied, they practice guerrilla fighting, and they don't, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the power. This is the thing.
And they know, and you know what. But before we get into this, I feel that in some place it takes me to what you said now. The master have to have some area that he shows his direct force.
Yes, exactly.
And to show to people where this is what we can do to you.
Yes. And this is what we will do to you if you do
Yeah.
not cooperate. I think we can make an analogy to okay, what is the role of homeless people in society?
Yeah.
I think homeless people are not there by accident, and people who are in jail and so forth and so on. So I think that this is a way to warn all the people who do not want to cooperate or are thinking about not cooperating. This is what will happen if you do not cooperate.
Every
You will
time
become
when I
that
think-
guy.
Yeah, every time I think what happens if I don't work, or if and suddenly if my parents cannot help me or don't want to help me anymore, I will be like these guys on the street, and
It's scary, right? It's scary.
Yeah.
And so they need so those in power always need to have some people who are made an example of. This is what will happen to you if you do not cooperate. You will be rejected from the system, and if you are rejected from the system, then who knows what will happen to you? And this guy knows what will happen to you because they experienced it. So the Palestinians, they now know what happens when you insist on not cooperating or not succumbing to the system. But the thing is that, like in the examples, do you think anyone wants to be homeless? No, no one wants to be homeless. People just get to this situation. They find themselves not being able to cooperate with society because they are different, because they are poor, because things happen to them, and then they find themselves in a situation where they can't help but resist, because if they agree to what the system is doing, then they will remain, their lives will remain horrible. Okay?
You think all homeless person is completely the fault of the society? There's no element of, I don't know. Like, I wonder if it's the complete analogy, because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I feel, I know homeless people who've been offered help and somehow they've got used to this life in the street. And
this is another aspect of the oppression that they suffered. Now they don't. Maybe they don't want to go back to where we were because it's even worse. Don't you sometimes feel that the very fact that you are now cooperating with society to keep living in your shitty apartment in the shitty city that you live in with your shitty job, and don't you feel that this sucks as well?
Yeah, it does.
I feel that this sucks all the time. I feel it all the time. Sometimes I want to be that homeless guy because at least they don't feel the obligation to cooperate with this system anymore in their playing the game.
Because I think, but with the situation in Palestine, like every time when I argue about it with people like from my own society who are, so they say the Palestinians had options not to get to the point that we treat them so
options to what?
If they would agree to to the partition plan for
Exactly.
if they would cooperate with Oslo, if they would and it's always a lie, because it's always Israel who violates. When you look at the ground who violated the agreement, you see that it's Israel. Just like now, it's every time the same. Who's cooperating with the ceasefire? Hamas is cooperating. They do everything on time. Israel violated it like already so many levels.
Yeah, from the first moment they violated.
They continue to kill people. They don't deliver the tents that they were supposed to deliver. They don't deliver the aid. They keep talking. Think about it, that you were talking about a ceasefire, and in Israel, and Trump is talking about eliminating them and sending them, and still they are keeping to the deal. It shows you how much this talk is always a lie. But anyway, there's this thing that they say, if the Palestinians would, you know what they always say? They always say, if they would be more interested in building their own society and not destroying us, the day that they will start caring about themselves and not about destroying us, they could have, maybe not all of Palestine, but in some place, and they will have...
This is the point. What is the structure of the argument? If they agree to accept the situation that we stole from them 80% or 90% of what they had and keep the 10% and be satisfied with the 10%, then they will be okay. If they agree to cooperate, if they agree to be in the position of society that they are in the low position in society that they are in, then everything will be okay for them. If they agree to be slaves, then they will be okay. This is the sort, and this is strikingly analogous to what they say to if they just agree to go work in, the shitty job that we offer them, that we so graciously and kindly offer them, then everything will be okay for them. This is the same kind of logic. It's the logic of masters. It's the logic of those in power. It's the logic of supremacists. It's the logic of colonialists.
Yeah, you set the rules that the cards are, all the cards are in your hand.
Yes.
Yeah, and with the Palestinians, you also see that when they did agree to it, like we saw...
It's also a lie. But even if it weren't a lie, it would still be a cynical, argument. Okay, so we've been talking for quite a while, and we want to get back to just saying what the arguments are that Zionists raise to kind of refute the claim that Israel is a colonial project, and to answer them more directly. So we were thinking about it, and we found like 3 major arguments, right? Which are exactly the kind of arguments that this guy brought up in his video. So you want to kind of sum them up?
Like you said more, but I think there are 3 that are the big ones, the ones that I grew up on believing in.
Yeah, and that we keep hearing again and again and again.
So one is that we already touched it, but we want to relate to it more explicitly. So that the argument that says there is no mother state, there is no metropole.
Yes.
There was never a clear metropole, like there was no country who said now Palestine is extension of Britain or France or whatever. It was always from the beginning an aim to create a new state, and it was since the inception. It's not like if you compare it to the United States, for example, it started as a colony, and then at some point the colonist says we want to have our own state. I'm not sure even if that's exactly how it was, but it was more like that. And here they said we want to create a Jewish state for the persecuted Jewish population, mainly in Europe. I don't know if it started, if the Arab Jews were invited from the beginning.
Yes.
It's also something to...
Yes, this is a sub-argument of this, that actually the population of Israel is not European Jews, but mainly and primarily at this point Arab Jews, which is another argument, and
which most of them don't call themselves that way.
No,
but
they wouldn't call themselves that way. But let's name the arguments and then start answering them. So the second argument.
So this is the first one. No mother state. The second is, we also talked about it maybe enough, that we're refugees.
Yes.
Not powerful colonialists who come and take over the resources. The people who didn't want to take over resources, they were seeking refuge, most of them. And the third one is that the Jewish people are indigenous to
Yeah.
Palestine.
That they have a historical connection to Palestine,
Yeah.
to the land of Israel.
Yeah.
These games of languages that they like to play. It's not a state, it's a land,
Yeah.
and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So these are the main three arguments.
Yeah.
And I want to start by saying something about the first two arguments, okay?
Yeah.
Together, in some sense. And again, this is not a debunking video. We don't want to dunk.
Yeah.
But we want to use this opportunity to compare and contrast what is going on here with other cases throughout history. And I think that there is something in common and there is something different. And yes, it's true that there is no clear metropole in this case. And it's true that the people who came here are refugees. Okay. But does it make things better? And I would claim that it's quite the opposite. Let's compare, for example, to what happened in Algeria when France did the colonial project in Algeria to exploit the Algerian population and the resources of Algeria. The colonist population there saw themselves as, first and foremost, French.
Yeah.
They felt that their motherland is France, and they are like, pioneers in the expansion of France to other places like Algeria and bringing the superior French culture and so forth to the backwards place called Algeria and their retarded culture.
Yeah.
So, okay, and what this means is that when the local population started resisting their exploitation and oppression, then the colonists could just retreat and go back to where they came from. This slogan, go back to where you came from.
Yeah.
And this is something that makes sense to say to a French person who is now trying to take over Algeria, who is part of the colonialist project in Algeria. This because it is something that is possible to do and makes sense to do in some context, okay, in some context in some moral framework. But the thing is that here it doesn't make sense to tell the vast majority of Jews living in this colony called Israel, they do not have a place to go back to. It's not something that is possible. I have no place to go back to. I just physically I don't.
Yeah, in your case, but here you can take the example. For example, I do have a European passport.
Yes.
I have a French passport.
Mm-hmm.
So someone could tell a person like me, go back to where you came from.
Yes, but the point is, you never came from. You don't know French. You don't know French culture.
Yeah.
You're not part of French culture. You are part of Hebrew culture.
Yeah, that's the thing. That the Zionists created a culture that didn't exist before.
Yes.
With a language that is spoken only here, right? Not nowhere else in the world. This and I couldn't understand like Palestinian who say it's not my problem.
Yes, of course. Like Edward Said said, it's not my problem. This is the situation. But let's keep this in the framework of a discussion just about what is going on.
Yeah.
I would claim that just factually, this makes the problem much worse, and it makes the project much more brutal because there is nowhere to retreat. And this is something that the guy we are kind of reacting to actually said.
Yeah.
The Jews don't have anything to do. They can't do anything but take a stand where they are. And we kind of agree.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of agree. Yes, it is true. But this is horrible. Because now they have only two choices. Either to let go of the colonialist project, go through a process of decolonization and integrate into the general society that lives in this area. But, this ship, in many senses, has already sailed long ago.
Yeah.
So, now the only other option that they have is to continue the brutal occupation of the land, the brutal exploitation and oppression of the indigenous population, and to drive this to its logical, end, which is the genocide.
That's why I think we are so important, people like us. Because we offer...
And so modest and humble.
No, but I do think people from our society who take our position and our collaboration with people like Salah and Naji and the people that were in the one democratic state, it's this collaboration. Right now, it's like we are the strong ones, but not in the long run.
Yeah.
And we offer this collaboration offer a ladder for the Zionists to go down, to climb down from this colonialist tree.
Yes.
But they don't see it that way. They will only see it.
They're still holding on for dear life to the branches of the tree.
Yeah, and it will take a serious shift in power to make them start listening to us. But they have to start to listen to us.
And when we say us, we mean also Palestinians who share this vision of one democratic state for all.
Right.
This is the us that we are talking about in this specific
And it's very
context.
important that we make this us with Palestinians, and that it would be so much us that you cannot differentiate between our position. And I don't feel like, for example, from like Muhammad from the One Democratic State Initiative, that we're differentiate in our vision.
Yes.
Not in any meaningful sense.
At least in this subject. Maybe
this
in other
subject.
subjects we do have difference of opinion. I don't know exactly, but in this specific subject, no, we're very much like-minded.
Yeah, and I think. But before we get to that, so like maybe it's something what I said now is something that we should say it again towards the end. But before we get to why we are so important.
And modest.
And what you said is that actually what Zionists are saying that, it's not a colonialist project because we don't have anywhere else to go, because it just makes this project more genocidal,
yes,
more brutal, and the people here feel that they don't have any choice but to go genocidal. And it's interesting, because first of all, I don't think it's the only case in history where people felt like this. I think I didn't go deep enough to the genocide of the people in America.
Yes.
But I think white settlers also had this a bit tendency of us and them. And I think us and them, this sentence that we all grew up, I heard us and them so many times in my life. And liberal Zionists try to pretend they're not in this us and them equation, but at the end they're both. And you saw it pretty well after the 7th of October that so many of them moved to the genocide camp.
Yes.
And I would argue that the one that didn't, it's either they're completely anti-Zionist like us, or they're more into the anti-Zionist. They have I think the Zionist framework is the settler framework, that I have to own this place, otherwise I will be destroyed by the natives.
Yes, this dichotomy.
Yeah.
Of own and control or be destroyed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's very sad, it's really hard. I have a lot of, I have part in me that always angry at the Zionists, but sometimes I feel
I pity them.
It's so hard and horrible to live. What sometimes surprises me is how can they live a normal life inside of that, How can I collaborate with someone who is an actor and an artist, and then he tells me, we have to either kill or commit suicide, and it's like, So how do you maintain all the other parts in your life?
I think they don't. I think they don't.
But they do. I know people like this.
No, but they don't really. This is a different discussion. I want to. This is an important discussion that we've had to a certain extent many times. But maybe let's keep
around it. We will always ask this because
it's a question that is just staring us in the face, hitting us in the face all the time.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to this thing, the logic of colonialism. Okay. And why do we want to use this theoretical framework of colonialism to understand the situation that we have here? Because it tells you, it gives you predictive power. This is what scientific theories are characterized by, the fact that they have predictive power.
Right.
And you know, we can go to lectures given by Ilan Pape, for example, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he understood already back then and way before it that what is going on here is a colonial project, and he analyzed the situation through this framework of colonialism.
Yeah.
And he could and did predict that the current genocide will happen.
Yeah.
It's just a predictive power of a scientific theory, which is something that supports, is strong evidence for the validity of this scientific theory, which is, and it is exactly why we use these theories, to be able to analyze reality and to know what to expect. Okay? And I think that when you look at, so the genocide that happened and is still happening to some extent right now is a result of what is in some sense a deterministic result of this being a colonialist project. And I think that both of us can attest to this being like this on a very personal level. So the thing is that we know that once you go against the genocide, you get a backlash from your society. You get horrible backlash. If we had normal jobs, we would lose them. If I had a lot of arguments with my family, you had arguments with your family. Like we lost friends, we lost acquaintances, we lost connections. Okay, it's you get backlash once you oppose the genocide. This is a part of how genocide is a natural result of the colonialist logic. And why is it like this? Because when you want to control the area, so you said you were talking about how the colonialist project regards the local indigenous population, how it leaves them no choice, right? You want to elaborate on this? I think it's highly related to what I was talking about.
Like there's always I think that the dynamics, why genocide is such a big part of the dynamics, because first of all, it's part of the dynamics very clear because you want as much of the land without the people that are on this land.
Yes.
And you want to get rid of them. And you see this, if you check how it works in Israel in every place where there is Palestinians in various levels. In Jerusalem, for example, if they live for a certain time, they're not allowed to come back.
Yes.
They don't let them house permits. And then when they build, they say it's illegal and they destroy their house. In all the mixed cities, there's tendencies of Jewish settlers to move in. And it happens in the West Bank, but it's important that
there's gentrification happening in Jaffa still, every single Jaffa, day, right now.
In Lid, but it's not just gentrification from economic reason. It's Jewish people move in in order to try to drive the
But it's also like
out.
the convenient coincidence that Jewish people in Israel tend to be richer than Palestinians in Israel,
Yeah, the economic and the...
It's mixed,
It's mixed. But there's also this thing that violence is always it's a like the indigenous population are always in this paradox that they can agree to their subjugation, to their economic exploitation, to the
Yes.
situation where they have no freedom of movement, where
Yes.
when they're humiliated basically in their own homeland, they're treated as enemies and strangers, and they have to suffer it silently, and if they resist, it's answered with more violence.
Yes,
with
and it's
more
an excuse to the violence, right?
and it's excuse to the violence, and that's why, you know, in a way the colonists always want them to resist, because
Yes.
then, you know, like
It's very convenient.
Nakba of 48, it happened because the Palestinians started it, and you know,
Yeah.
that's how we learned for this about this in school, you know, like, you guys, what do you want? You didn't accept the partition, you started the war, so you lost. That's how
Yes.
we learn about it, as if like ethnic cleansing is a legitimate response for something, as
Yes.
if genocide in Gaza is a legitimate response for something. It's always, but the Zionists will always claim it's a response.
Yes.
That they're not the ones that initiated the violence, because they make a more how do you say, covert, or
Yes.
more covert violence
Yes.
that provokes some violence or resistance from the occupied indigenous population, and then it's
It becomes overt
and
violence.
then it becomes overt violence that is always an excuse to kick the native population off their lands, and you know, like, many Israelis says about the Palestinians, look how they don't care about Hamas, how they don't care about their own population, they sacrifice their own people, but and it's true that the Hamas knew that if they do something like 7th of October, the result will be that the Israeli response will be super violent. I don't know if they predicted.
I think they didn't predict the sheer amount of violence. Like,
Yeah.
it's way more than anyone could have predicted, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if they predicted it, but they knew many people are going to die, and they
Mhm,
knew
mhm.
that in a way they have to choose. It's either, and they said it's either you give us a choice between dying slow or dying fast. They
Yes.
said it very explicitly.
Yes.
And you know, like, in the Israeli twisted mind, they always think that this language is some cynical way to appeal to the Western mind. Like, also this guy, right?
Yes, he said exactly that they use the language of colonialism so that the Western world will heed their plea.
Yeah, not because they're actually mean what they say,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
because they're not real people, you know. The dehumanization is so deep that when they say something, it's never because they're actually trying to tell you what they mean.
Yes, yes.
Because
It's always manipulation, like demon-like manipulation.
Yeah.
But I want to use this opportunity to just explain to people. I think many people are aware of this at this point, but I think that another aspect of this being a colonial project is that colonial projects are always characterized by the settler population being supremacist, having supremacist views towards the indigenous population and exploitation of the indigenous population. And in Israel, this is so fucking apparent.
Yeah.
When Israelis speak about Palestinians, they call them Arabs. They don't call them Palestinians. Okay, they want to deny the fact that that this place was called Palestine until not very long ago, and that these people are indigenous to Palestine. They don't call them Palestinians. They call them Arabs. And Arab is a curse word in Hebrew.
Yeah.
You can call someone Aravi Masriach, which means stinking Arab. Okay, and this is one of the worst curse words that you can use. And the racism is rampant. It's one of the most extreme cases of racism and the most overt cases of racism that you've ever. If you come to Israel and you see how Jewish Israelis speak about Palestinians, it's mind-boggling. Okay, and it was like that way before October 7th. It was like that for the entire time that I have been alive and aware. Okay, just so everything is clear. And the exploitation is also heavily present everywhere. Who are the Arabs? The Arabs are the nurses. The Arabs are the cleaning people. The Arabs are the construction workers. The Arabs are the ones who do all the menial jobs. They're, the mechanics. They are they do the menial jobs that don't make them a lot of money, that keep them subjugated, and that the Jews do not want to do. So this is another aspect of this being a colonialist project, that the indigenous population is being exploited economically all the time. And like you said, you leave the Palestinians, and this is, again, the choice that all indigenous populations have within this situation of a colonialist project, either to be subjugated or to resist. If you agree to be subjugated, you will continue being subjugated, and maybe you will suffer violence. And if you resist, you will definitely suffer
But
violence.
you can still ask, okay, so they leave you the choice between subjugation and genocide. Why do you choose genocide? Why did you do the thing that invoked the genocide? And there's a reason for that. Because the Palestinians know that their only way to gain the support of the world is when the violence become overt.
And not covert.
Because when it's covert, nobody gives a shit about them.
Yes.
So I think it's they know that they have, the suicide bomber as a symbol, that they need to commit suicide. It means to take action that will destroy themselves.
Yes.
And that's why they have this philosophy of martyrs. Why the martyr is such a big thing in every occupied and colonized population in history. It's always like this, because if you don't agree to sacrifice your own life, you will never be free from your subjugation, and it's horrible. But
this is the thing that's so horrible about colonialism, and this is why we want to identify colonialism and oppose colonialism wherever we see it.
And they try to say that is a feature of Islam, but I don't think, okay, they use Islam. Of course, you need it. It helps to, because religion helps to develop this martyr mindset, because it helps you when.
But it's no coincidence that an occupied population becomes more religious as well. It's not. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah, but you can also be a martyr with being 100% atheist. It's not about that. It's knowing that in order to be free, you have to be willing to sacrifice, because the occupier will never free you by his own will. And then they use it, the Zionists, saying, you see, they love death more than they love life, and no, it's the fact that they love freedom so much, and they are willing to risk so much in order to the next generations to be free. The people who are doing it. And I think history would look at the thing that the Zionists hate most about the Palestinians will be the thing that they will look at history as how noble these people were, that they came.
You mean
back,
noble?
Noble, yes.
Yes.
That they came back to their ruined houses, that they didn't give up. All these things that it's their unwillingness to be erased from history,
or to remain being subjugated and silent.
Yeah. So I think, but again, it's not something special about the Palestinians. It's this dynamic of colonialism. That's why it's so important to recognize it. Of course, there are many special features about Palestinian society, but I think these things, if you know what colonialism is, you can predict, like you said, you can predict that this is will be
that this is what will happen. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's answer also this argument about the Jews being indigenous.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the most cynical arguments, and this is the one that Zionists love the most.
Yeah.
Actually, they really love to think of themselves as indigenous population in the land of Israel.
Yeah.
So let's define what indigenous means. So again, I'm no expert, but I did hear experts talk about this, and I did read texts that experts wrote about this, and this is the way that experts define an indigenous population. An indigenous population, this word indigenous, is not an essentialist claim about someone.
Yeah.
It's a claim about a dynamic between two different populations. You are an indigenous part of an indigenous population if you are part of a certain dynamic where there is a colonialist project, and then there are two kinds of populations. There is the population of settlers who are not from this specific land, so they came from somewhere else to control this land.
Yeah.
Then you become indigenous because you are part of a dynamic, a power dynamic, where someone comes from somewhere else and tries to take away your land. Then you are called indigenous.
Yeah, like being indigenous is not about how many generations you can count back of presence
Yes.
in this land. Like nobody in like who gives a shit about it really? Like I don't like it when people go to this, my grand like so what? Let's say you came to a land and your father came to a land and you were born there. You don't have rights to live there as equal with rights and everything. What you don't have right is to take other people's rights, other animals' rights, other beings' rights. That's what you don't have.
Yes.
Like. And this is what makes you a colonialist. And the moment you become a colonialist, somebody else that you go against become the indigenous, right?
Yes, yes. The fact, the claim, the preposterous claim that you guys have some sort of historical connection to the land of Palestine just because some book that you find sacred has it written in it that you just I can't even say the argument for how ridiculous it is.
Yeah,
It's so some book says that some people lived in this place and I have this notion that I'm somehow related to these people without any proof.
Yeah.
There's so many levels of stupidity and ridiculousness.
And just think what happened if everyone in the world, let's think like in the Kantian, categorial that act as if it becomes a moral
rule.
If everyone start behaving like this and find roots of places that their ancestors of thousands years ago lived and claim ownership and claim right to establish an ethno-state on that land for this specific group, it's so ridiculous.
Yes. So my answer to this is, okay, so there was never colonialism in Africa. You know why? Because all humans originated in Africa. This is a biological fact. No one is refuting this, right? Only maybe religious fanatics that are crazy and science deniers, okay? But it's a biological fact that the origin of humanity is from a certain area in, I think it's in southeastern Africa, okay? So, by the argument of Zionists saying we have a historical connection to Palestine, even if this were true, this would not make you indigenous to the land of Palestine, and it would not make your project any less colonialist. Because if we use your logic, or one way to see this very clearly, is that if we use your logic, then there was never any colonialism, European colonialism in Africa. Because all the people who now live in Europe used to live. Their people used to live in Africa. They can trace back their lineage and find an ancestor that was born in Africa.
Yeah. And also, I don't think it's so important, but it's something worth noticing that it in Judaism for many years it was forbidden to come here in masses and create the states. There are laws in Judaism against it, and that's why they're like when they say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, it's so ridiculous because there always was the religious Jews who oppose this because it's against Jewish religion, and there's still people in Palestine and outside who claim this is a wrong thing to do. So,
but I personally don't care about this, even if the first and only rule of Judaism was that we must create this project in Palestine, then still I would object to it. I don't care. I personally care zero about this.
No, but I think there is some importance to say that even inside Judaism there is not agreement upon this.
Yes.
Even inside Judaism. And why? Because Jewish people knew that it will create mess and it create wars And they didn't want it because they knew that in most places in the world they're a minority and it will risk them. That's why they made these laws. Like, and if you don't know, it's called שלושת או ארבעת השבועות, I don't remember. And it says clearly, לא לעלות בחומה. It means, I remember I was learning in half religious school and it was talked about. You don't go and לעלות בחומה, it means to create a state, you know? It's literally talks about that.
Okay.
And what does it say? And this is where the Zionists are true, that you can go as individual because this land is a holy land, and if you want to do extra religious stuff and become more holy as an individual, you can come and do it. And,
yes.
And I think no one is denying that no one can tell anybody else you don't have religious or spiritual connection to this land, and I don't think someone can...
Yeah, and spiritual connection is something very subjective and personal.
Yeah, and yeah, there is a connection of the Jewish religion to here, but you can have this connection as Jewish Palestinians who live in equality with other Palestinians. You don't need this Zionist supremacist ideology that keeps creating war and violence towards the people, and it which is colonialist ideology, which claims dominance. Because, you know, we always say, what is colonialism? To me, it's rooted in this need to have dominance, in this need for some group of people, and it's, you know, the more we talk about it, I feel not just that Zionism is not just, in a way, it's unique case in how the colonialist tendencies are so extreme.
Yeah.
Because how it's involves supremacy and victimhood, you know, and which it always goes together. Because if someone has self-confidence, it doesn't need to be supremacist, right?
Yes.
If someone is sure of his place in the world, he's fine with others.
Yes, a sense of superiority is actually compensation for a hidden sense of inferiority.
And why would you have it if you're not traumatized and hurt? You know, it's all connected together.
Yes. I think we've been talking for a very long time. I think there's a lot more to say about this issue of colonialism, but we started the conversation.
Yeah, yes. But it's a good conversation to have.
Yes, I think it will be a good idea to talk to our friend Dan Ben Ishai about this as well. Maybe we will do this. So,
but one thing, last thing I wanted to say, that I heard, like, Alon Mizrahi said it, and I liked it, that he said, think about it, a guy like Herzl write about creating a state in a place that he doesn't know the culture, he never was there. It's like colonialism on steroids, you know? and that's like, you know, so it's not colonialism, it's colonialism on steroids. And I think, like, in many cases, Zionism is colonialism on steroids.
Maybe this should be the name of the episode: colonialism on steroids.
It's his expression, but I liked it. So
okay. So I will use this opportunity to make a small announcement. Okay. 2 days ago, yesterday. Time is weird. Yesterday. We had a Zoom call with Dan, and we decided to record an episode for a new channel. The new channel is called Radix, Radix. And this is a project that we wanted to start like a couple of months ago. We were talking about this very extensively, and then Dan and Ayelet had a daughter, okay, and they are very busy with being new parents, and this kind of put the brakes on the development of this project. But now we chose to revive it and to start it slowly, okay. So the first thing that we did was record a Zoom call where we talked about where we are, how we're feeling, and this needs light editing, and then we will put it up on this channel, on the Radix channel, which is a project where we collaborate with Dan and with Ayelet as well, in all kinds of things, and maybe the vision is to have a kind of cooperative, collaborative conglomerate. I don't know how to call it, where we all cooperate and do all kinds of stuff, both individually and as a group. But we're just seeing what directions we want to take it, and going slow. You want to say a few words about this project? How you think about it?
I see it as some cooperation that I wish that it will grow, of like people who cooperated to rethink a new world, an anarchist world, that people cooperate voluntarily.
Yes.
And create systems of of I don't know, like that are kind of, it's this thing that we talked about, collective dualism. You remember this episode?
Yes.
That's like we can both flourish as individuals and are creative individuals, but we also are a net who, because we know we cannot do it only by ourselves, and we collaborate. So and we speak and imagine and create this new world that we want to see into existence, and by living it ourselves, and we don't know how it can be, but we start like I think this is what we try to do between us as well. And
yes, but we are only two people, and we want to expand this to a little bit more. And the channel is called Radix because we really want to put an emphasis on being radical. And what does radical mean? It means that we want to not assume anything. We want to rethink everything. We want to really go to the root. Radix means root. We want to go to the root of the problems, and we want to go to the root of the solutions to the problems. Okay, so we're not going to be, we don't want to conserve anything that is not worth conserving. We don't want to be conservative. We want to be radical. Okay, and we want to be radical in all aspects. We want to be anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist, anti-statist, anti-human supremacist, anti-patriarchal, and for the freedom of everyone, and for equality for everyone, and for prosperity and life to everyone. This is the goal of this channel, and I hope that this will become the goal of everyone. And this is what we're trying to do, to spread this message and affect as many people as possible. To share this message that I think is the most important message that we can spread. Okay. Any last remarks before we close this episode up?
No, let's keep it up. It's not any final. I don't feel like we finished discussing this subject, but what I wish to do next time we talk about this subject is to understand more the deeper roots.
Yes, what is colonialism in a deep sense? Yes, yes.
And we didn't talk. Yeah, you say. I know.
I would like to talk about human colonialism, and this is something that the more I thought about colonialism here, about the ways that colonialism happened here and in America and in Australia and between humans, I realized that there is something even wider and deeper going on here, and that is that humans are colonizing the entire planet, and that they are exploiting, exterminating, and expelling all other species from basically everywhere. And I want to talk about this process of human colonialism, and I think it's a two-way process. When you understand colonialism between humans, you can understand the way that humans are colonizing other species, and when you understand the processes in which humans colonize other species, it sheds back light to, like you can understand the process of colonialism between humans even better. So I think it's a good direction to go in and to go deeper and to understand this phenomenon in a deeper and wider sense.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of thinking, and it's exactly what I talk about by understanding colonialism in a deeper sense.
Yes.
But and then it can take also how it resembles in a personal relationship between two people, how it's
Yes.
because it's something about power, about domination, I think anarchism and decolonization go hand in hand. Like, I think you cannot be really into decolonization without being an anarchist. Like,
And vice versa.
So,
yes. Okay, so
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this, I think, very long episode.
Let's hope they will get to the end, because we said some important stuff.
Yes, and we will continue this very important and engaging discussion in further episodes, again, about going deeper into this concept of colonialism. And I think that it will be a good idea to take the podcast in this direction of every episode, like picking a subject and trying to go as deep as possible into this subject and to deconstruct everything around this subject from all possible angles. This is something that is making me feel like we're doing something meaningful and significant and new, and not just going back to the same kind of loops, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And justice and freedom for all.
Yeah.
And bye-bye.
Bye.